Now that we got the V-trusses finished up, it's time to talk about end walls. So we sell end wall kits that are custom built to fit your needs. Today, what we're gonna be doing is we're installing the end wall kit to fit an 8-foot roll-up door, a 36-inch storm door, and ventilation in there. So while this one may be different than the one that you're purchasing, know that we can custom fit an end wall kit for any house that you need. You can also DIY build a kit out of lumber yourself if you'd like to, but we really highly recommend that you purchase this all steel end wall kit here. So now let's go through the steps of how we install this.
Starting off the end walls, we're going to go ahead and lay tape measures from side to side here to get the points that we're going to be inserting the ground stakes for the uprights. So we've got uprights that are going to be going in on either side of the 8-foot roll-up door, and then here in a minute we're going to be installing uprights for the 36-inch storm door. These install really similar to the larger ground stakes that run down the sidewalls. So you're just going to make sure to get these in plumb and level. Mike now has test fitted the square tubing that's going to go over the top, and then marking at the top for where we're going to make the cut, because all of the square tubing that comes in is going to be longer than what's necessary. Now Josh is going to trim back the ground stake because they tend to mushroom a little bit as you're hammering them in. Then we're going to be test fitting to make sure everything fits as intended, that it's still plumb and level. Now it's time for the tension band. So the tension band is going to go on the outside of the bow and on the outside of the square tubing and just connected with a bolt and a nut, and we're going to cinch those down. Once they're in place and we're ensure that they're level, we're going to put a Tek screw to lock that into the bow. Also on this house, we have 36-inch storm doors. Bob and Josh are here measuring to put the ground stakes in to match the rough opening of the door that we've chosen. They're also taking into account that on top of the ground stake, we have to slide the square tubing over that, and we need to be able to make sure that that's going to fit. So after they get the ground stakes in, we're going to test fit the door to the square tubing, and once we ensure everything's fitting correctly, then we can lock down the tension bands to the bow, ensuring that these are not going to move. Now we've got the uprights in place, it's time to measure for our headers and the seals that are going to hold the ventilation equipment, the roll-up doors, and the storm doors on each end. Once we have the measurements, we're going to cut down the square tubing to size, use our L brackets and Tek screws to mount them to the uprights. And then we're going to bring them back over to the uprights, test fit to ensure everything's working properly. Once we have them level, we're going to go ahead and attach them with Tek screws. Next, it's time to measure and cut our 2x6 pressure treated boards to fit the gaps on the end walls between the uprights. We're going to use the same L brackets, Tek screws, and wood screws to attach to the uprights. So you're going to use the Tek screws for the metal to metal connections and wood screws for the wood to metal connections. Next, we're on to adding the wire lock base to the end walls. The base is what's going to hold the film to the greenhouse structure itself. So we're going to take measurements to add it to the baseboards and then picture frame around the roll-up door. Michael's made reference marks to cut 45-degree angles on the 3 pieces going around the roll-up door to ensure that they join properly. Then when we go to attach them to the uprights, we're going to use Tek screws for the metal to metal connections. As you can see here, John's actually using a Tek screw to pre-drill the base, to then use wood screws to attach the wire lock base to the timbers.
As we mentioned earlier, all of our end wall kits are highly customizable. So the exact measurements and dimensions that we've set up here might not be applicable to the way you're doing yours. But let's talk about a few things that we're going to have in common across all the kits here. So for each of the kits, you're going to have an all steel end wall. The way that we're going to connect our uprights to our headers are going to be with our L brackets and Tek screws right here. It's a real simple setup. So as you can see, we framed this in for a 36-inch exhaust fan that we have going on the back side here. Another similarity that we're going to have is going to be for the uprights and the way that they connect to the bow themselves. So you're going to be sticking the tension band over the outside of the bow and the outside of the upright. Then you're going to be sticking a carriage bolt through that upright and the tension band and connecting the nut on it.
Now we're ready to add the wire lock base down the links of the greenhouse on the headboard. So we're going to go ahead and lay these pieces out down the side of the greenhouse, and then we're going to use a drill bit to pre-drill holes to attach to the timbers. Since this is going to be a metal to wood connection, we're going to use wood screws for this the entire length down the greenhouse. This is basically a rinse and repeat process all the way down the length of the greenhouse. The only difference you're going to run into is when you get to the end walls. So once you get to the end walls, you're going to butt the wire lock up to the end, make a mark on the inside of the last bow, and then you're going to trim that last piece of wire lock base down. This is to allow a gap for another piece of wire lock to go up and over the last bow and butt up to it. We're going to repeat this same trimming process on all 4 corners to ensure that we leave a gap for the wire lock base piece that's going to go up and over the bow.
So now we're ready to show you guys how to do the wire lock base. And what we've done is John has already pre-drilled this wire lock base with a Tech screw to make it a little easier once we get up the ladder to go ahead and tap this into the 2x6 board on the header. He's gonna go ahead and drive 3 wood screws into this wire lock base, and then they're gonna start to fold it over the curvature of the bow and then tack it down with Tech screws. All right, so now that we've got that first piece bent over the bow, we're gonna go on this side and do the same thing, repeat the same process here. So once we get this one mounted, we're gonna take a measurement to see what that gap is, to cut another piece of wire lock base to fill that gap so we have a continuous arc all the way over. Now this is gonna be different on each house. You might have where both pieces overlap each other, so instead of filling the gap, you're gonna be trimming this second piece instead.
Our last part with the wire lock base is going to be to trim a piece that we can apply to all 4 corner ground stakes to fill the gap between the headboard and the baseboard. We're going to attach this with a Tech screw just as we've done previously.
All right, so now that we've got all the end walls done, the wire lock base on, we're gonna put the wind braces on now. Basically, these are gonna come with houses that are of a length of 40 foot or longer, and that helps give rigidity to the frame since it's such a long structure. So what you're gonna do here is John has already backed out the Tech screw out of the top of our wire lock base that runs up the side of our end ground stake here. He's then taken a tension band and put it through this gap, and that's gonna attach the wind brace to that. So what he's gonna do is he's gonna put that through there, we're gonna run a nut and a bolt through it and cinch that down. So now that we've got this cinched down, we're gonna go ahead and take that same Tech screw and run it through the wire lock base and through the tension band to really attach it to the ground stake. So now that we've got that section in, we're gonna run this down at an angle. There's not a specific measurement that we're gonna put this to here. It's basically a visual appeasing angle that we're gonna have that we're gonna match all the way around. We found that for this greenhouse. We've made a marking and we've repeated that same process on every single wind brace install. So we're just repeating the same process here. Michael's just putting the tension band on, the nut and bolt, cinching it down. Once he completes that, we're gonna put a Tech screw through it right here just to lock it in place. And that's it. So you're just gonna repeat this process on all 4 corners.